Well, a series that didn't necessarily go the Toronto Blue Jays' way, but it does give us a lot to talk about.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jays. Thank you for making Locked On Blue Jays your first listen every day. We are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now. As always, I'm Brayden Wasco. He's Carter First. You can find us on Twitter, Brayden5 Wasco. Carter First, too, as well on our main Twitter account at Locked On Jays. You can also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Locked On Blue Jays. And if you're new here to YouTube or you keep coming back to these videos, hit the subscribe button. It's free. You might as well do it. Doesn't hurt you, helps us. And you get your shorts, your live streams, your podcasts, the videos, the whole ordeal. This was a bit of a crazy series. There's a lot to get into. They didn't get swept. The Blue Jays do come away with a third game, which is massive. You needed to at least get one here, and you did that. There were blunders. There were good things to take away. There was interesting games. It was fun baseball to watch, at least game 1 and 3 at least. It was fun baseball. Game 2 sucked, straight up. We're going to get into all of it today. Obviously, an off day as you guys listen to this today. So no game. We got a lot to get into over the next few days, especially in the home stretch here. But Carter, my man, I guess just the weekend of baseball that was, take away the 2-1 record in this series or 1-2 record here. I think it was, for the most part, pretty entertaining ball.
Yeah, like you said, game 2 sucked. Absolutely. That was not a very fun game to watch whatsoever. But I think we got our first taste of what is going to feel like playoff baseball. These big series down the stretch against these teams over 500, against some of these division-leading teams, like the Los Angeles Dodgers, the Chicago Cubs being another team that is going to be competing for their division down the stretch. The Texas Rangers, not necessarily a division-leading team, but a team with very good pitching. A team that will be at least in the running to make the playoffs down the stretch. So that was my major takeaway. It was that how are the Toronto Blue Jays going to do in pressure-filled situations? And like you said, games 1 and 3 were very entertaining, very fun watches, even though one of them didn't necessarily go the Toronto Blue Jays' way. It's baseball against good teams. You're going to have to beat these caliber of teams if you want to go on those playoff runs. So like you said, a lot of good things to take away, some unfortunate things to take away. But one of the main things I noticed from over the series that I don't usually like to draw on this, and I'm not going to say it's the reason that the Toronto Blue Jays lost a couple of these games, but the umpires was one of the first things I noticed. Just the amount of inconsistencies throughout these games. That Mason Fluharty at bat with Ohtani, we will talk about. Like, I don't know how that is not called a swing, because it's the most obvious swing of all time. Pete Walker and John Schneider thought they were going to jump the railing and storm the field after that call, because it's such a big moment for a team that, again, trying to avoid a sweep. That's a series salvager. Like, now I feel a whole lot better about that Dodger series. Even losing 2 out of 3, like, we were, again, you don't love losing a series, but you're okay with it. You get swept. I mean, it's going to be tough to just, look at the online critics, look at just the fan base reaction. A lot of people would be saying, oh, the Blue Jays are absolute frauds. Look what they did against the Los Angeles Dodgers. So bad umpiring, but overall, not the series that you wanted necessarily, but it's not going to hurt you, and it's not going to be detrimental to your progress in the long run.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I guess, I don't know, this is the first time in a while that I've noticed not all, not baseball fans, people that watch baseball all the time. They're, the casual fans, I guess. I was out at a family gathering during game 3, and the entire family was sitting on the couch, watching to see if the Blue Jays could pull it off. And, the ups and downs of that game. It's been a long time since I've had this much fun watching baseball. And that's due to the fact that this Toronto Blue Jays team is in the running. And people are going to be upset about this series, losing the series, obviously. But I think the majority, what I take away, I guess, is the fun that I'm having watching and enjoying this team this year. So I did want to put that out there before we start getting into some positives and negatives. I want to start with game 1, Carter, because the Battle of the Unks, the old dogs eating, that game was like it was like reliving a childhood memory. Like, it was awesome. I was glued to the couch watching that. And the duel, right? It wasn't two old guys going out there not being able to get jobs done. It was two old guys, giving you a little bit of a time machine. It was that good of a ball game. And don't get me wrong, some of the stuff wasn't great. There was, I think, a lot, with Kershaw, I think there was a lot of missed opportunities to get onto him, but it was fun. It was fun to see those two guys go at it.
Yeah, it's just two surefire Hall of Famers. Again, maybe not in the primes of their careers, but it's always going to be fun to watch these two no matter where they are in their careers. Just going into this game, like some of the stats, if you guys obviously are aware about Max Scherzer and Clayton Kershaw, but this is what we had going into this game. Just looking at the wins, Max Scherzer 218 wins, Clayton Kershaw 217 wins. So right next to each other there. Career ERA of 3.18 for Scherzer, 2.52 for Kershaw. That's 2,919 innings for Scherzer, 2,808.1, so 8 1/3. And then you got strikeouts over 3,000 for both of them, 3,451 for Max Scherzer, 3,010 from Clayton Kershaw, and that's with 3 Cy Youngs apiece. So again, one of those crazy matchups, no matter where you're watching it, whether what team you're a fan of. Like, I have a few buddies that I work with. One's an Athletics fan. I mean, that got to suck for him. But even he was like, oh, that's such a cool pitching matchup. Like, I'll probably set it sometime aside this weekend. I'll watch that as well. So just if you're a baseball fan, that's going to be a matchup that is so fun to watch. And again, it's not like these guys are throwing up absolute meatballs every single time, like going over like these guys' stats. Clayton Kershaw, like you said, the Jays had some opportunities to take advantage of him. We're unable to really kind of, come in clutch and get that one big hit. We're kind of going to what happened in that game a little bit more thoroughly, but Clayton Kershaw on the day, 6 innings pitched, 7 hits, given up 1 earned run, 4 Ks and 1 walk. When you look at Max Scherzer on the other side, 6 innings pitched as well, 6 hits, 2 earned runs, given up, 5 Ks, 3 walks. Very good outings from either side. Like, I'm taking that every single day of the week, whether you're looking at Clayton Kershaw's outing or you're looking at Max Scherzer's outing. But let's kind of dive into it. One of the parts of that game that kind of hurt me, and again, would have been a huge scenario to get a hit in, was the second inning. And it's Miles Straw up to the plate. And when you look at Miles Straw, you're like, oh, maybe he's going to have an infield hit. Maybe it's going to be a bunt, something like that. He has come in a bunch of scenarios down the stretch. So I was very confident in what Miles Straw was going to do at the plate. And he puts a great swing on the ball, too. So right off the bat, I'm like, yes, that's got to be through. Mookie Betts just makes an unbelievable play at shortstop, makes a catch, and then doubles up Ty France at second base. Right there, a little part of me died. That was one of the big moments I knew. It was only the second inning, but I knew in that moment, like, this is going to be one of those things that does come back and haunt the Toronto Blue Jays. Obviously, with the way the game kind of panned out, is that 1 or 2 runs they got in that instance definitely would have mattered. But yeah, definitely sucks, especially when it's one of those guys that has been, coming up clutch in these scenarios time and time again. A guy that, if you're not a Toronto Blue Jays fan, you might not even really know of Miles Straw. But that was one of those daggers in that game. I'm like, oh, this is going to be a tough one to swallow.
Yeah, of course. I mean, that took me a little bit out of it too, just because you felt it in the moment that it was going to be huge, and you have to be able to jump on good teams early. And if you could have done that there, I think that completely changes the momentum of the game. But Carter, I think the big standout for me here, which just can't happen, and I think is going to be talked about more and more as we get closer to a playoff series, is how good the top of your lineup does. You can't go 1 for 8 in the top 2 guys in your lineup and expect to really do anything crazy offensively. Those are the guys that need to set the table for the big boys. And if you're not able to do that, and don't get me wrong, I think this isn't a year-long problem. That's something we've been dealing with. These guys are usually very good, but I think in this game, in this instant, you go 1 for 8, you just aren't happy with that. And they're 2 guys that notoriously do the job in Ernie, Clement, and Davis Schneider. But in this scenario, them going 1 for 8 does hurt you.
This is one of those things that I'm not overly concerned about the production from those two, because you shouldn't have those two at the top of your lineup for the rest of the season. As soon as George Springer comes back, he's slotted into the 2 spot. You have Ernie, Clement, Nathan Lucas again platooning in that leadoff spot. As much as I do like Davis, I love what he's doing for the team. Not a guy that I necessarily want leading off. I have a lot more comfortable with him being that power bat, hitting 6, hitting 7, providing some pop, kind of in the middle of that order. I know he has a pretty good walk rate. It has a very good knowledge of the strike zone, but not necessarily that prototypical leadoff guy that I would want, especially when he's being thrown in against sometimes right-handed pitchers. Just they have a lack of personnel. There you go. That's the word I was looking for. Personnel to have in that leadoff spot. So that's why we've kind of seen this platoon. It has worked out a ton, but Dave Schneider, not the guy I traditionally want to see in the first two in your lineup. But that is a good point, especially with Vladdy, with Bo, with what Vladdy's been doing post All-Star break, just with what Bo's been doing all season with runners in scoring position. You want runners on base for when these guys do come up to the plate. But just a couple more things from throughout this game. Another time where it was kind of like that TSN turning point for me, where I looked and I'm like, okay, this is probably the game as well, is when you look in the 7th inning, just a couple of tough defensive plays. Shohei Ohtani kind of rolls over a little bit. Vladdy tries to make an athletic play, just kind of tips it off the top of his glove. The ball's going right to Ernie Clement, probably get Shohei Ohtani out at first base, but he redirects it in a different direction. That is a play where they reach there as well. He would have been out at one, just a little bit unfortunate. And then Bichette gets a double play ball. He tries to go home instead. I get it. Your offense isn't necessarily scoring runs. If you get the out at home, that is a massive run the Los Angeles Dodgers would not have had. But if you're Bo, you probably just have to take the shutout there. Unfortunately, does not get the out at home plate. And then just a couple calls don't go your way. And that was a huge thing for me this series. That like there is probably 4 or 5 instances where I can think of. One of them being the Louis Varland pitch against Freddie Freeman, where he throws a 99-mile-an-hour fastball right on the black and he doesn't get the call. So little moments like that, especially against a good team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, you're going to need some of those to go your way. I think this was one of those games that a lot of the little moments just didn't really fall in the Toronto Blue Jays direction.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that more. I mean, we'll get into the game 3 of it all because, very upsetting sort of how all that went. But you know what? I think that the big takeaways from game 1 is that your offense really, I mean, they get 10 hits, but they're not cooking here. They aren't being able to score with the runners in scoring position. That's something that this team has been so good at. So takeaway 1 was the thing you rely on the most, scoring, and scoring with runners in scoring position don't happen. So it doesn't matter how many hits you get, if you can't get the job done in the big moments. And this was a game that just seemed like the big moments weren't going the Blue Jays' way. And then just the pitching in general. I mean, Brendan Little, who has been very good throughout the whole season, is starting to show some cracks. I mean, he gives up 1 hit, 3 earned runs, 2 walks. It's just, again, it's hard for me to really take a look and blame Brendan Little specifically. I mean, not blame him for this one, but to know if this is something that's going to continue or if he's going to break out of this little bit of a slump he's having. Pitchers go through this just like position players. Will this stick around for Brendan Little or will he figure it out? I think is going to be one of my big questions to look forward to the rest of the season.
See, I am a little bit worried about this one is because it is a command thing, and Brendan Little really hasn't been in the strike zone a whole lot this season. It's just the stuff is so disgusting, and the knuckle curve is so good that he's been getting a lot of chase. And I think hitters are starting to realize it took a little bit longer than I thought it would have, that, hey, then maybe if we just don't swing the bat a lot of the time, we're going to get in advantage counts. And I think that's what you started to see a little bit from Brendan Little in this series as well. There was a few guys, actually, that came out of the bullpen that their control and command had me a little bit on edge. Yariel Rodriguez, another guy that I definitely want to talk about later on in this episode as well. But like with Brendan Little, if hitters aren't going to swing at that pitch, he's not going to throw competitive pitches. Again, he's going to be the most successful when he is getting that chase, when he is getting that swing and miss. But you got to be in the strike zone, at least early on in the count, to get in those advantage counts. You're a lot more likely to get that, that disgusting swing, that garden hose type swing. We're big MLB The Show baseball players, so we obviously like that term. You don't get those caliber of swings, or you're more likely to get those caliber of swings if you're in those advantage counts. You're in those 2 strike counts. If you throw maybe a fastball on the black on the outside corner, and then maybe you do that knuckle curve right after, and they're going to be more prone to swing because they just saw that strike at the knees. So I'm with Brendan Little specifically, again, a guy that isn't necessarily in the strike zone a ton, but I think he's going to have to adjust just like hitters have adjusted to him. And he's going to have to realize, hey, I might have to get a little bit more aggressive, especially earlier on in counts. But it hasn't been very good for Brendan Little over the last little bit. And again, a lot of that for me is chalked up to the command. But like just looking at this guy's last 7 games, he has 5 innings pitched, 8 earned runs over that stretch. That's good for a 14.4 ERA. Again, Brendan Little is not that bad, has a whip of 2. Like, it's just a very bad stretch for him, like you said. But there are a few things that are starting to be a little bit of a cause for concern for me for Brendan Little, especially now when you don't necessarily have the most options with lefties in your bullpen. But I mean, with the way Mason Flority's looked in the last couple games, I mean, maybe you do have a guy that's starting to flourish at the right time, especially with the struggles that Little's been having.
Yeah, and again, I think the bullpen is gonna be a big conversation moving forward, not just, coming out of this series, but, moving forward into the last, stretch of games here. So it's gonna be something we're gonna have to keep our eye on. I will be interested to see who can bounce back, who can, put the slump behind them moving into probably the biggest stretch of baseball you're going to play up until the playoffs. So, yeah, we'll have to wait and see. Carter, let's take a quick break. We'll come back. We got to talk game 2. We got to talk game 3. Obviously, not a ton to talk about in game 2, just some things that didn't go the Jays' way and some just bad outings in general. And then game 3, I am super excited to talk about because, man, what a ball game. We'll be right back after this short break. Today's episode brought to you by Game Day Hue. This is my go-to apparel on the golf course. If it's the hats, they're just clean, sleek hats, or the golf gloves. The golf gloves, the best ones I've found. I absolutely am blown away by just the quality of glove. Game Day Hue makes clean, no logo gear with team-inspired colorways for every pro and college fan base. It's all about letting your colors speak for you. No giant logos, just smart, versatile style that works on game day, on the course, or anywhere in between. I was wearing it. We went to golf this weekend, golfed in the hat, wore it to ball, and then, out with my friends as well, just because it's not that super, super flashy. You can get ones that are flashy, but mine is just a clean white hat, and that's something I've been looking for a ton. Right now, you can get 15% off with code MLB15 at GameDayHue.com. That's GameDayHue.com. The code even stacks on bundle deals, so now's the time to load up. Let the colors talk, because colors speak louder than words. That's GameDayHue.com. Code MLB15. So, Carter, jumping into game 2, I think, again, this is where we have to talk a little bit about Yariel Rodriguez. We got to talk a little bit about Chris Bassitt. I guess start with Chris Bassitt, sort of just what you thought of him in that game.
No, Chris Bassitt's been a little bit unpredictable for me recently, and some of it is like command thing, but I think a lot of it is just like Chris Bassitt doesn't have the stuff necessarily that's going to blow you away in a lot of these baseball games. So like when he throws a cutter over the middle to Shohei Ohtani, he hits it 420 feet or whatever it was to dead center field. You're like, oh, it's like that kind of sucked to watch a little bit. So with Chris Bassitt, like we talk about the starting rotation, we talk about like what it might look like down the stretch. I wouldn't mind to see Chris Bassitt coming out of the bullpen. It's not just because of this start. I think it's just one of those guys that him, along with Jose Berrios, have been the most unpredictable. And when you look at Chris Bassitt, it's a guy that I still trust to get outs in a big scenario, and he is a guy that is very flexible in what he can do. But like if we're talking about giving hypothetical playoff scenario against the Los Angeles Dodgers, like I don't love the prospect of rolling Chris Bassitt out against that lineup. Again, one of the most prolific lineups in all of baseball. But in this outing, there's nothing that really stood out for me. I think he was gritty, kind of had the same mentality that he always has. He had to fight through a lot of at-bats, had to fight through, the odd bad call here and there as well, which was a theme of the entire series. But not the greatest thing to see from Chris Bassitt. And just these starts, as soon as we see these starts, down at the stretch and, getting closer and closer to the playoffs, these are the thoughts that at least are starting to roll into my head. It's not as much of, this specific game is – the overall takeaway on Chris Bassitt sucked or was really good in this game. Like that's what like my mentality is for the rest of the season. No, like it's just little things from each start that I'm taking away. And for me, my over encompassing thing now is that you do have a lot of starting pitching depth, especially when you do get Shane Bieber back, and that should be coming sooner than later. But overall, just not what I wanted to see specifically from Chris Bassitt. But there's nothing like that really stuck out to me that's like, oh, this specifically was what went wrong for Chris Bassitt. I think it was just a good lineup that kind of took advantage of a pitcher that is sometimes not very consistent.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I don't think it's as much on Chris Bassitt himself as it is matchup based and guys that are going to do damage. And when you get into a playoff scenario, I think soon as the order you start to see, the same guys for the same pitcher for the second time, third time through the order, when they don't have some stuff to change it up. I don't know. Does Chris Bassitt really fit into a situation that in a playoff situation where you're going to hopefully see a lineup twice or three times? I don't know. And that's sort of back to when me and you were chatting about who could possibly be the starters for a playoff series. That's why we both had Chris Bassitt coming out of the bullpen. We just don't think that a second, third time through the order for Chris Bassitt maybe suits him very well in the playoffs when you're facing some of the best hitters in the entirety of the league. And I think that was a little bit on display here. But Carter, then going to sort of the rest of the bullpen, two guys I guess we have talked about. Braden Fisher, by the way, an absolute dog. I love this guy. Yariel Rodriguez and Sir Anthony Dominguez. I guess which one, where, who, what do you want to start with there?
Yeah, I'll go to Yariel, but I quickly want to backtrack to Chris Bassitt for a
Sure.
little bit. And I think one of the reasons that I don't necessarily love him against the prolific offense is a lot of that. It's just the swing and miss stuff. There's really no upside with Chris Bassitt. Like, yes, there can be outings where, he's going to go 6 innings and get a lot of soft contact. It's going to work out. Balls are going to be hit right at people. But when you don't have, that specific pitch, like Kevin Gausman, you've got the splitter. When you look at Max Scherzer, he's still got that slider, and then the fastball is playing, which is making his secondaries that much better. When you look at Chris Bassitt, like, the sinker's a good pitch, but is that that's not necessarily a strikeout pitch. You look at the sweeper, it can be good. The slider can be good. The curveball, depending on where it's located, especially for you, that can be a good pitch as well. But when I'm looking at Chris Bassitt, he had 4 whiffs on the day today. So just not really generating any swing and miss whatsoever. And when you got a gauntlet of a lineup where, it's Shohei Ohtani, Mookie Betts, who started to heat up again in the series. You got Will Smith, Freddie Freeman, Teoscar Hernandez, all these guys that are prolific hitters and can hit the home run ball consistently. For a guy that's, kind of pitching to contact, that's a scenario where I think you're playing with a little bit of fire. So that's where I'm at with Chris Bassitt. But yeah, I'm going to jump into Yariel Rodriguez. I don't have as much on Sir Anthony Dominguez because that's just kind of his outlook. That's just kind of his profile. Is that sometimes he's not going to have his stuff. And when he doesn't have his stuff, it's going to be a little bit of a grind. It's going to be one of those outings where it's going to be a tougher watch and he's going to have to, really battle his command. But you just hope that at that point, the stuff is good enough and he can just be close enough to the strike zone where he is going to be able to persevere. So what we've gotten from Sir Anthony Dominguez is kind of exactly what I expected. And that's why I didn't love him being in this, absolute for sure. I'm rolling him out in the 8th inning. You can use him at times in the 8th inning, but he's not one of those guys that I'm rolling out there and being like, oh, well, there's no sweat every single time. I don't really know if you have anyone right now in this Toronto Blue Jays bullpen where you're throwing him out specifically and you're like, oh, well, this is the easiest 0 of all time. I think you can look all over this bullpen now where there's a lot of guys that I trust, but it's not necessarily like you're going to go out here, Mason Miller and be absolutely fine. Edwin Diaz, Manuel Clase from last season. You don't necessarily have one of those guys, but, kind of talking, not getting to the point here. Trying to talk about Yariel Rodriguez, and I'll keep this a little bit shorter. The issue with Yariel has been recently, and a lot of it is the command as well. I just went over his last 4 starts. They have not been very good whatsoever. Yariel Rodriguez this season has given up 13 runs in 53 innings, 20 on the season. So he's given up 20 runs over 56 innings. 13 of those runs in the first 53 in the last 3 innings, he's given up 7 runs. That's just not playing. And just look at the command that he's had over the last couple of games. So in this most recent game, he threw 10 pitches, 5 strikes, 5 balls. You look at the game before that, threw 19 pitches, 9 strikes, 10 balls. So more balls than strikes. The game before that, August 5th, he had 14 strikes, 12 balls. Pretty close to that 50-50 split. And you go one more back to July 30th against the Baltimore Orioles. 10 strikes, 14 balls on 24 pitches. You're not in the strike zone. Hitters are going to realize that, and they're not going to swing the bat. And that's what we're seeing with Yariel Rodriguez, is that a lot of these pitches are not very competitive. And that's kind of what we saw with Yariel Rodriguez when he came to this team last year, is that when he struggled, a lot of it was due to the command being all over the place, the fastball not being competitive, the slider not even starting as a strike. He's got to have pitches that are at least starting as strikes, and you got to be in the strike zone with the fastball. If you're not in the strike zone with the fastball, none of the secondaries are going to play. Hitters are going to be a lot more lackadaisical at the plate, be a lot more prone to taking and sitting on a specific pitch. So once Yariel Rodriguez does come back in the strike zone, that's when damage is going to be done. But it's just going to be tough to be a pitcher in the major leagues when, you're not throwing strikes or you're kind of sitting at throwing strikes 50% of the time. You want those numbers to be closer to 70%. So you can be in the strike zone again, get into those advantage counts and be able to use your secondary stuff to get that swing and miss.
Yeah, Carter. I mean, this is something we've talked about with Yariel Rodriguez all through this season into last season. Yariel Rodriguez is at his best when he's attacking hitters, when he's going at them. He's pitching balls in the strike zone, and he's making guys think and worry about what's coming next. But when you see him get into a little, I don't know if you want to say it's lack of confidence. I don't think that should be the answer because he's been very good all season. But when he starts to lose it and lose the command, he isn't able to go after hitters, and then you can see it mentally change him on the mound. Usually he's a guy that comes out with what looks like all the confidence in the world that he can do any job asked of him. But soon as he starts to falter a little bit, you sort of see him start to the mentality shift on the mound with him. And that's worrying because You need a guy in the bullpen that you can rely on to go out there in a tough scenario. Hey, if you don't have your best first 3 pitches, can you bounce back from that? And if you can't do that, you're going to hurt yourself over this entire over a season-long outing. So, yeah, I don't know. I think there's promise for Yariel Rodriguez. Because you've seen him have success. It's just now, can he get out of that little bit of the slump to get sort of back on top? And again, I'm going to keep saying this with all of these bullpen arms. It's how can they work themselves out of this, out of a slump? Because for the majority of this season, a lot of them have been really good. But it always does leave me with question marks, especially when it comes to the bullpen. And we're going to have to talk about the whole Jeff Hoffman of everything later on here, Carter. I guess, is there anything really else from game 2 that you wanted to cover? For me, this game really just sucked, and it sort of felt like it just sort of went by because it was such a shellacking. But I don't know. You got anything?
Yeah, I got 2 things, and they both involve Ernie Clement. Just shout out to him for scoring the only run in the Jays game. And then I think the highlight of the game, though, was Ernie Clement throwing his ball at the Dodgers dugout, trying to take out Shohei Ohtani for all he was doing against the Toronto Blue Jays. So shout out to Ernie for trying to get that guy, at least gone for the game, maybe the rest of the series. You never want anything major to happen to a guy like that. But Ernie was, just going in the bag. He was, going in the bag of tricks, trying to help the Toronto Blue Jays out in any way that he could. But yeah, not a lot to say from that baseball game. Not a lot of fun to watch whatsoever. But then we got game 3, and it kind of made it up for everything. It made me feel a whole lot better just about the series, the way the Toronto Blue Jays were playing baseball. And that's the game that we really want to focus on. We are going to dive into that coming up after this short break.
Carter, today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. You guys don't know how much I love FanDuel because I like betting on sports. It's the rush. It's the feeling. You get a couple buddies together. You all put the same bet down. You ride it out. When NFL season starts to come around the corner, me and a couple buddies, we all throw a pick in for the week, and then we all sort of just ride it out together. It is the best time. For just 24-hour, FanDuel is giving you deals on the NFL season prediction. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week 1 even kicks off, this is the moment. I'm a big futures guy. I love betting futures because I sort of feel like I can ride with that team. Say my favorite team doesn't do too well. Well, now I'm going for these guys because I can win a bunch of money. So it's always an option. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your future bets now, because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. So, Carter, continuing into game 3, and one that I was very nervous for. I think that having Eric Lauer and seeing what he would do against such a good lineup in the Los Angeles Dodgers, I was a little concerned. But, like I said, I had family. We all had family over, and we were watching the entire game together. It was an absolute blast, and it ended up being just a very fun game to watch. But Eric Lauer, I think this is the first real time you've seen him falter. And I think it goes back to sort of the same conversation that we had around Chris Bassitt here. And you can see the type of pitcher that this Dodgers team was taking advantage of. And I don't think that it was a horrible day by Eric Lauer. I don't think this is, oh my goodness, he's falling off the cliff. No, I think this was not his best outing. I mean, he only goes 3 innings, gives up 3 earned runs, 4 Ks, 3 walks, and 2 home runs. The long ball sort of killed him here. But I think in the entirety of this sort of season, I'm not taking this one game that Eric Lauer didn't have his best stuff and throw him under the bus here. That's not what's happening. I think there were pitches that were left over the middle. Some strange, I think, just pitch placement at some points of the game for Eric Lauer that killed him. And then obviously just getting in some walk troubles and then the long ball. So I don't want to rag on him too much because of the incredible season he's had so far. It is one sort of blister here.
It's just kind of what you said, is that when you look at the Los Angeles Dodgers, they have a lot of swing and miss in that lineup. Ohtani will strike out from time to time. Teoscar Hernandez, a guy we're very familiar with. We know that guy is going to strike out from time to time. Max Muncy, another guy that has that swing and miss in his game as well. So if you're looking at a guy like Eric Lauer, you're looking at Chris Bassitt, Jose Berrios, who we didn't see in this series, but those are the type of guys that have been playing to the soft contact. And that's why these high velocity swing and miss guys are so sought after, especially in the playoffs, because you have a lot of these power hitters where the home run ball means a lot. A lot of these guys usually have strikeouts in their game as well. And you look at specifically, we'll throw the New York Yankees into this, because you see what happens if, teams put the ball in play. You see what can happen if teams put the ball in play. So when you're playing a team like the Los Angeles Dodgers, you want to roll out a guy that kind of can take advantage of some of their weaknesses. Eric Lauer's not going to blow you away with the stuff whatsoever. He's going to hit at most 94 with his fastball. Does have a few good secondaries like the cutter will play. Does have some other pitches where he can throw the changeup as well. But when you're when you're Shohei Ohtani and you have unbelievable plate coverage and you eat anyone that throws, 90, 92, whatever breakfast, unless, it's Mason Fluharty all of a sudden. But when you're Eric Lauer, that's the traditional guy that the Dodgers are going to kind of feast off of. The guy that, the softer throwing left-handed pitcher, the softer, pitch to contact type of pitchers, and Jose Berrios and Chris Bassitt. So with Eric Lauer, like you said, you haven't really seen a blow-up start from this guy since when he was coming out of the bullpen. I could probably pull up his last start that he blew up, but it was probably about 2 months ago. So this doesn't really happen with Eric Lauer. So I think you definitely have to give him the benefit of the doubt here. But this is the first time that I've watched Eric Lauer pitching where it didn't really look like he was confident. Looked a little bit unsure of himself on the mound. Again, you got a bunch of juggernauts in the opposing batter's box, so I kind of get it to some degree. But for a guy that's been in the conversation for a lot of people, myself included, on, hey, are you going to throw this guy in a playoff scenario? Is this guy going to be a playoff starter? Well, you're going to be facing good players when you're in a playoff scenario, especially when, you're looking at the NL and some of the teams that you might have to face in the World Series. If, that's a big goal, obviously, for this team to have. But that's the conversation that Jays have played themselves into. So, yeah, I guess in the grand scheme of things, not going to, completely hate on Eric Lauer for what he did in that game. You don't see blow-ups from Eric Lauer at all. But something to definitely monitor, especially down the stretch where you're going to be playing some very good offenses.
Yeah, that's what it comes down to, right? Is measuring stick series. Some of these series that the Toronto Blue Jays are going to play, we're going to measure up. How does this team play certain teams? Because these are the quality of players and quality of teams that you'll be playing in the playoffs. Like I said during the Rockies series, how much do you take away from this? I don't think a whole lot as a fan. I think you take more away from a series with the Dodgers or the Yankees or the Red Sox or whoever it may be. You got to take more away from that. I think the one good thing I saw is a little bit the battle and the grit and the heart that we've talked about that this team has had all season. And that showed up here in Game 3 from some unexpected sources, may I add. Carter, the Ernie Clement bomb was awesome. I jumped out of my seat so quickly when he hit that ball. And just again, we've talked so much about Ernie Clement, but he's been so important to this team's success and, has had a couple errors lately, but usually on both sides of the ball, defensively and offensively, Ernie Clement has just been an absolute stud.
Very underrated guy still throughout the major leagues. This is a guy at the start of the season people wanted DFA'd. And credit to me, I've been on the Ernie Clement train for a little while, and these are some of the reasons. I didn't necessarily expect him to come in and, launch a baseball into the daylight, I guess. So usually the night games for the Los Angeles Dodgers, the third game was obviously during the day. But this is the kind of stuff that I'm not necessarily expecting, but I'm not surprised when it happens. I'm not surprised when Ernie Clement is inserting himself into a game and is making a big play defensively, is smacking a ball to left field for a single. Again, I'm a little more surprised when it comes with a home run, and it's a home run ball, especially in a high leverage scenario. But yeah, it's something that Ernie Clement's been doing game in and game out. He's been doing a ton of little things right. A guy that chose hustle, game in and game out, got the Heart and Hustle Award from the Toronto Blue Jays, which we didn't even really bring up because I'm not gonna lie, I kind of forgot that was happening. But shout out to Ernie Clement, kind of worked it into this. But yeah, it's just a guys like that throughout this season. The guys that at the start of 2025, you thought, might have some sort of role in the team, but it wasn't going to be a significant one. Ernie Clement, one of those guys that kind of proven the doubters wrong, along with a lot of guys on this baseball team. And, having key moments pretty much, it seems like, you're going to get a couple from them every single series. So shout out to Ernie Clement, obviously, for that. Got to give props to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. and Addison Barger as well. Back-to-back moon balls to the pull side. Absolutely love to see it. Vladdy again heating up since the All-Star break. Had a double in the first inning, which honestly I thought was gone as well. I thought that was going to be a 2-run home run from Vladimir Guerrero Jr. just because how hard he hit that ball. If you can get Vladdy starting to fire a little bit, and we have started to see Vladimir Guerrero Jr. fire and start to get that power a little bit, it's going to be a fun stretch. It's going to be a fun, last 40, 45 games, especially when you do get George Springer back, assuming that, he can just be average. Not like I would love to see you, George Springer, of what we've gotten up to this point in the season, but can you necessarily expect that coming off of an injury? I just want to see George Springer back because we've seen how electric this guy can be within this lineup. Just want to give a couple more shout outs and then focus on obviously the main conversation from this game. But Tyler Heineman just absolutely gunning people out. Did that in the first inning. I believe it was Will Smith right before the Freddie Freeman home run. So that's one run taken off the board right there. Dave Roberts, very interesting decision in the sixth inning to do a double steal when you're right in the top of your order. Shohei Ohtani gets gunned out, but again, Tyler Heineman throws an absolute seed there as well. Just kind of looking at some other things I have here as well.
Yeah, you know what? The foot placement of Addison Barger on that tag as well. I know it's one of those little things that goes under the radar, and we only see if a play like this happens. But the way you set up to take a throw from home is so important to being able to make the tag, being able to protect the bag without giving up, without being runner's interference or something like that. So great play by Addison Barger, getting his foot in the right position and being able to swipe and make the tag. It just a really, really good play. So I just thought I'd throw that in there while you were looking for your stuff.
No, absolutely. Like that's one of those plays that looks pretty innocent and looks like it's not that hard, but there's a lot of things, a lot of footwork, a lot just, being aware of where you are in regards to the base path, knowing where the runner is. He's sliding to the backside of the base. He's sliding right at the base. Sometimes they don't even slide whatsoever. So there's a lot of things that you do have to consider for, more of an innocent looking play like that. But I'm just going to dive into it. We kind of went over some of the umpire calls. Again, you got some here. Seranthony Dominguez had a ball that was, pretty clearly at the knees. It's not get called. I'll go over the, Shohei Ohtani thing one more time with Mason Fluharty as we continue on with this. But we look at this Toronto Blue Jays game, 13 walks. If you would have told me the Toronto Blue Jays were going to walk 13 Los Angeles Dodgers and they were going to win that baseball game, I would have told you were absolutely insane. With how good this offense is, you don't want to give them that many free passes. 13 walks, absolutely insane. Jeff Hoffman accounting for what felt like all of them pretty much because 5 walks in the game. It's tough for me. Like I'm a pretty avid Jeff Hoffman defender, but it's tough for me to defend a guy like that, especially in this scenario when, you give up free pass after free pass after free pass. And you blow the save in the 8th inning. Then Ernie Clement comes up in the 9th and gives you another opportunity. And then you try to blow it again because you can't find the strike zone. So for me, when looking at Jeff Hoffman, I didn't care as much about the 8th inning. Like, again, you're right in the middle of the order. Had a couple pitches that didn't go his way. Freddie Freeman had a very gritty at-bat in that 8th inning as well. Then you get to the 9th inning and you do the exact same thing where you have a chance at redemption and then you shoot yourself in the foot. Thank God for our savior, Mason Fluharty. Absolutely ridiculous stuff. But, what were your just thoughts watching Jeff Hoffman just have this inability to throw a strike at a big moment?
It's sort of hilarious because as soon as I saw him come out, I had a little bit of just worry in my heart because we've seen situations where Hoffman comes in. And like you, I usually defend him. But even me today, I was sitting on pins and needles a little bit, just a little bit terrified. And sure enough, after every pitch, I got my head in my hands being like, please, God, don't blow this. Please don't blow this. And then it happens. And then Mason Fluharty comes into the game. And he looked like he was seeing bats. He looked like he was seeing ghosts. Like that guy was white. I'm like, oh no, like I feel terrible. In his first ever save, you have to get out Shohei Ohtani and Mookie Betts.
With the bases loaded.
With the bases juiced. And he gets Shohei Ohtani, even though the ump did everything.
That should have been a 3-pitch at bat. It's absolutely ridiculous how that's like, how do you miss that? It was the most obvious thing of all time. Completely kind of turned into the ball, the bat. He pretty much swung. Like he almost did a full swing. And then the third base ump decides that I don't know, just wasn't paying attention much to what happened there. That would have been an instance where I wanted to see John Schneider get kicked out. I don't care, maybe making putting a little bit more pressure on an already pressure-filled moment. But that was just one of the worst calls I think I've seen from umpire against the Toronto Blue Jays, at least this season.
Really bad. And honest to God, I thought he was going to get tossed. When the camera panned over to John Schneider and Pete Walker, and both of them were losing their minds, I'm like, John, get out there. Like back this kid up a little bit. Like Fluharty looked like he was like the devil was behind Shohei Ohtani trying to, scare him. He looked terrified.
Yeah, he had to sell his soul to strike out Shohei.
That's what it was. No, and yeah, I think that was an opportunity missed by John Schneider to get tossed to back up your boy, but obviously I guess he didn't need it. And when that game ends and Fluharty gets the job done, I don't think I've ever seen somebody's eyes wider than Mason Fluharty when Kirk comes up to him in that Heineman comes up to him and Fluharty gives him the tap and he keeps tapping him like he doesn't know what to do because he's never in that situation. It was so funny. Like for a guy getting his first save to be against two of the best players in baseball in such a close situation. I mean, wow. Hat tips to Mason Fluharty. At the start of this season, we thought, wow, this is a guy that could come in and do something and be a big part for this bullpen. Went through a tough slide, came back and gets the job done here. Hat tips to him for sure.
I know we're like 4 months removed from this now, but there was still a world at the start of the season where Dick Lovelady was a pitcher on this Toronto Blue Jays team before Mason Fluharty was. Again, didn't make sense to me at the time. Still does not make any sense to me whatsoever. But yeah, shout out to Mason Fluharty. Just the amount of relief that was shown on this dude's face when he got that last out was insurmountable. But I mean, credit to him. When you see Jeff Hoffman absolutely crumbling, right in front of your eyes, guy comes in again in a huge scenario, the biggest scenario he's ever been in his major league career. Bases loaded, 1 out against 2 of, like you said, the best hitters in the sport. And then you make Shohei Ohtani look like you just back pocketed him, like the worst, some of the worst swings I've ever seen from Shohei Ohtani. So you absolutely love to see that. It's something with this delivery where it's not traditional. A lot of these hitters don't necessarily see it. And if you don't see it very often, he's one of those guys that if you haven't seen, it's probably going to be very tough in your first couple of at-bats. But I think it gets a little bit easier once you've seen him a couple times. So, get the first one out of the way, maybe save the second one for a World Series appearance. Throw Mason Fluharty in just every single time against Shohei Ohtani if that ends up being the case. But just credit to Mason Fluharty, especially with the situation. You lost the first 2 games. You're in a scenario where Ernie Clement, hits a massive home run. You just hit back-to-back home runs in the 8th inning before. So your offense has showed up massively in high leverage scenarios, and you're almost at this point where you're throwing it away. I mean, the vibes have been at an all-time low if you lose that last game, especially because you were up multiple times in that baseball game. But in the grand scheme of things, I guess the way that I will end this episode off is, yes, you did lose a series to the Los Angeles Dodgers, but you started the weekend up 4 games on the Boston Red Sox, up 4 games on the up 6.5 games on the New York Yankees. You finished off the weekend up 4 games on the Boston Red Sox, up 6.5 games on the New York Yankees. So you did not lose any ground. Every team of the top 3 teams in the AL East did lose a series this week. And you could argue that the Toronto Blue Jays are playing the hardest team out of all the teams that AL East teams are playing this weekend. So in the grand scheme of things, you walked 13 guys in the third game of the series. You won that game. You lose 2 out of 3 against the Dodgers. You go 4-2 on the road trip. I know one of the series was against the Rockies, but you can't be mad at a 4-2 road trip against whoever you are playing in the major leagues.
No, for sure. And you know what? I guess I'm going to leave it here, Carter, for me. Just one more shout out I wanted to give. Louis Varland. I'm becoming a fan of this guy. And right from the trade deadline, when I started to do more research into him, I really, really enjoy watching him pitch. So yeah, shout out there. And I actually, you know what? I was thinking back. I think it was Kirk at the end of the game, wasn't it? Did he come in to pinch?
He actually, it might have been because he was he did pinch hit. So at that point, It probably would have been Kirk. So I think you're right, actually. So good catch there.
No, it was just something in my head. I'm like, oh man, that looked like Kirk, I thought. And yeah, I'm pretty sure he did come in. So, but let us know. Give us all your thoughts, feelings, comments down below. Obviously, a lot of you guys are going to let us know about Jeff Hoffman and your feelings, and go for it, honestly.
I think we talk about that tomorrow is like maybe who's the closer for this Toronto Blue Jays team. Like one of the things that we can definitely talk about because Jeff Hoffman's been under scrutiny for a very long time. The trade deadline was supposed to solve some things. I don't know if it necessarily did. I think it just made for more questions because for me, like there's 6 or 7 guys that, again, I still trust. But do you trust them in that closing role? It's definitely a conversation that I'm looking forward to having, and we should be able to fit that in for the Tuesday episode, especially because we do have an off day. The Toronto Blue Jays can think about a couple big stretches coming up here. You got the Chicago Cubs, you got the Texas Rangers, 2 good teams. Chicago Cubs with a very good offense. Coming off a series where you didn't necessarily pitch that well, could be a big off day coming at the right time for the Toronto Blue Jays. But I just wanted to say thank you guys for watching. All the likes, comments, support recently has been much appreciated with the trade deadline, with the playoff push coming about. We appreciate every single one of you guys that is jumping aboard and, grinding day in and day out with us Monday through Friday, and then for some live streams that are definitely going to be coming to you guys as the season does progress. But Brayden, is there anything else that you want to add for this Monday episode before we do take off?
No, it's another big week in Blue Jays land, so I'm just preparing my head.
I think we're at the point where every week's a big week in Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. It is. Yeah, every week I'm saying that now. So yeah, huge week as always. Anyway, we'll talk to you guys tomorrow.